I think it's so important to honor your capacity and how you want to live. If you're having to reinvent the wheel every single day, you have less capacity for presence, less capacity to sit with yourself, to sit in silence and meditate and refill your own cup. All of these things that we treat as luxuries, but they're really the foundation for how we show up in the world. So that's an example, right? Every morning, I take a moment for myself because if I am feeling 10 out of 10, everything I touch in my life, my kids, my relationships, my career, they get the 10 out of 10 version of me.
Welcome to the Rewire for Birth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Cindy. I'm a naturopathic doctor and birth guardian, and I couldn't be more thrilled to have you here. This podcast is all about rewiring the way we think about pregnancy, birth, and postpartum by offering a holistic perspective that empowers you to embrace your journey with confidence and strength. Each week, I'll bring you expert insights, valuable advice, and inspiring stories to help you feel prepared and empowered. We'll dive deep into the transformative experience of bringing new life into the world and explore ways to make your birthing journey truly beautiful.
Please remember that although Cindy is a naturopathic doctor, she is not your naturopathic doctor. This information is made available to you for educational and informational purposes only and should never be used as a substitute for medical advice. Please see rewireforbirth.com/disclaimer for details.
On this episode of the podcast, we have Corina Sanchez. Corina is a time strategist and expert in sustainable productivity for working moms. She's the founder of Moms Who Leverage, a program that helps moms reclaim their time, energy, and sanity, even in the middle of the mess. After having 3 kids in under 2 years, I'm going to say that again, 3 kids in under 2 years, Corina recognized the urgent need for a more sustainable way to manage the invisible load of working motherhood. Drawing on her over 15 years of experience as a corporate consultant in tech, where she led complex programs at companies like Microsoft and SAP, she merged proven tools with the lived reality of modern motherhood. She is certified in the ATCAR change management process and has helped scale transformations in both enterprise and family life. Her signature method empowers moms to offload the chaos into systems, freeing up their time, protecting their energy, and helping their households run smoother with less friction and more flow. This is such a necessary conversation that we don't often have on the podcast. So I am so grateful that Corina is coming on to teach us all of the wisdom that she has to share. And I'm excited for you guys to hear about her twin home birth story. So let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Corina. I have been waiting to hear the story of your births. From what I know of you, you take a very intentional approach to things, and I am so excited for the listeners. A lot of moms and moms to be, a lot of families, a lot of women who want to birth something beautiful into the world are listening, and they are going to receive all the juicy nuggets of wisdom that you have to share today. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, Cindy, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited. I'm so honored to share this story. This is a true before and after moment for me.
And I've only received like tiny little teasers, if you will, of your story. So I'm so excited to hear the full breadth of it. Corina, I'd love for you to start wherever you feel called to start. You can start with your first birth, or you can start with the second birth experience that you'd have. And I'd love to hear, you said there's a before and after. And let's dive into that transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will add a teaser in saying that there was such a wild card in my motherhood experience. I never saw it coming. So When I first became pregnant, I was on the heels of a pretty intense grief journey. My mom had passed in early 2019. And I guess second, or maybe that was the first wild card, right? I never imagined becoming a mom without my mom walking beside me.
Mm.
But in a way, that deep area of grief is what cracked me open to become more aware, more open, and more curious as to this is the beginning of a life. And I just witnessed the end of one.
Mm.
What if they're really like 2 points along a circle instead of this linear line? And from that point, from that mindset, those questions of well, what does birth really mean? How is it designed to feel? What's the natural design of it? I realized that I really wanted to experience it. I didn't want to be disconnected from it. I didn't want to fear it. I wanted to actually understand it and dive into it. And this is coming from someone who is not the most adventurous when it comes to physical things, right? The thought of skydiving terrifies me. The thought of getting a tattoo, I'm like, well, I don't know, needles. But I realized I don't think that's the design. I don't think the design is to focus on the pain. I think the design is meant to bring you closer to it's a thinning of the veil for almost a year. So, from that point of view, I started to look into a more natural birth process. I had a lot of questions as to what do I need to do to prepare? How can I enter this phase of my life with as much intention as possible? Not go on auto drive, not just listen to conventional advice, but really get curious and ask more questions.
Mm. I just wanted to say I'm so sorry to hear that you lost your mom right before you were about to start your family. And as someone who has experienced losing my mom, it's deep, right? And it does open your eyes to a lot of things about just life. Like, let's question all of the assumptions that we've been making up to this point, because you get to, first of all, not only hear the cliche statement of life is short, you see it, you feel it, you see the consequences and the aftermath of that. And so it really makes you kind of take a stand for what you feel is right for you in this single fleeting life that we have to live. And so I totally feel you on that. And I also am starting to understand why you do what you do, because the mother needs to be mothered. And so when we don't have that, when we don't have our own parents or the village around us, we need to be intentional. And so I'm really starting to understand the depth of the work that you do a little bit more.
Thank you for sharing. And I feel that so deeply, right? It's such a massive loss to lose a parent early in life.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it's a gift. Not a gift that I think I would
Totally.
open willingly, but given the fact that we can't control or change the outcome, what is the best way to honor that legacy to keep them present? And that is 100% the reason of mothering the mother, because my mom passed from breast cancer. She was super young. She was 56. And I saw her live this life of running herself into the ground and I expecting that somehow there would be some natural compensation, that life would swoop in and be like, oh, okay, I've seen everything that you've done and here's some relief. That didn't come.
Yeah.
So I had to think differently about what does it look like to build on that relief. And the real center of the story here is that both of my brothers, who are younger than me, have autism.
Mm.
So part of my mom's journey while she was here was taking care of my brothers who had a lot of demands, and we love them so much. It's very different to raise two boys that have autism than, let's say, it was to raise me.
Mm.
So when I went into my first birth, even though we don't have definitive answers as to the cause, I could start to see a lot of patterns emerge. And the reality is that the rate of autism in home births and in birth centers is very low.
Mm.
Although I didn't have the absolute certainty as to why, that was enough for me to say, this is a factor that's within my control. And I'm going to do everything that I can to give myself and my family the shot of accounting for that. So I had a really compelling reason as to having a holistic birth, right? It wasn't a trend for me. It was something that was deeply embedded in my family's legacy and history. That
Wow.
also came though with a cross country move. I was living in Seattle. I was in Colombia when I found out I was pregnant. I was living in a cabin in the woods, like 2 hours outside of Seattle. And we made the decision to move to Miami to be closer to family. I'm from Venezuela originally. My husband's from Colombia. And it was a wonderful move. I really feel like our son guided us here. Um, but that said, when I landed here, I went with a birth center that I felt good about, right? It was my first experience in this, and they positioned themselves as being a birth center that was across the street from a hospital in the event that there was a transfer that was needed. What's interesting is that even though it was a good experience, and at that moment it was all I knew, it wasn't the type of birth that fully honored the natural progression of birth. What I mean by that is it was my first birth, right? And it can take the body a minute to get going. And had I had a little bit more of a tender approach to, you're going to be okay, this is going to take some time, but let's support you in the most intentional way, I think the outcome could have been a little bit different. And I saw that with my second birth. With this first birth, it was 26 hours of active labor.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah. Let's just take that in.
It was quite intense. And I pushed for like 6 of those hours. I had a lot of people around me. This was a time in my life that I was still learning what it meant to define boundaries, to honor them, to hold them with a complete sense of this is okay. This is coming from a place of love. But I shared that because I think that also was part of my journey as to what's the consequence, what's the impact of having someone in your space that maybe doesn't really understand what you're doing, that has a lot of question, that has that energy of doubt, and how does that impact the woman's experience?
Absolutely.
So it was a healthy birth. My son was just the light of our lives. He's incredible. But my recovery was really rough. This is a birth podcast, so I feel like I can share this.
Tell us all the things.
I had just like the most intense recovery when it came to tearing. I ended up in the hospital because of hemorrhoids. So ironic, right? Avoided a hospital for the birth, ended up in the ER a few days later. And that was probably the most traumatic experience of all.
Yeah.
They ended up having to cut me open, no anesthesia, towel in my mouth, like just wild. So I share all of that because I didn't know any better. I didn't know how good it could be. And I also didn't know what an experience in the hospital would be. I was kind of in this limbo state. And more than anything, really grateful to have had a healthy birth and the outcome that I wanted. When my son turned 1, I found out that I was pregnant. It was Christmas morning, actually. So I had all of the same symptoms that I did the first time around: insomnia, nauseous, like everything kind of was achy. I took a pregnancy test Christmas morning and I thought, like, this is so cute. This is incredible. No better gift than this. But I started to feel really weird. I felt really stretchy. I felt like this feels different. So I called a new birth center at this point and they got me in right away. I do find that it's really interesting that in the US, you kind of have to advocate to receive a certain level of care early in your pregnancy. When I found out that I
Like
was
as soon
pregnant.
as you found out, yeah.
So when I found out in Colombia, I was able to get care the next day. In the US, the experience was more, we will see you when you're further along.
Like 12 weeks.
10 weeks, 12 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas in Colombia, there was more of this awareness of those first weeks being important, being tender, of just the emotional experience of wanting to connect. So that was a new thing for me to navigate through, but divine intervention, divine timing, because It was super important that I got in and checked out because it turns out as they're in there with the wand, they check the heartbeat, everything's good. She turns the device, and all of a sudden I see this second sack really on the screen, but I am in absolute disbelief at this point. I turn to the tech and I ask her, "It's my bladder, right? What is that?" And she looked at me with this face of, "I don't know how to tell you this, but no, there's two babies in there."
Oh my gosh.
And there's absolutely no way, absolutely no way.
Oh gosh. And your son is only a year old, right?
He's in the room. He's only a year old. He has no idea what is happening.
Yeah.
My husband he was so happy from the beginning.
Oh
And
gosh.
it was really cute. So as he's celebrating, my son picks up on the excitement and he starts to celebrate too. So there's this contrast of them just like, wow, and me over here like, what is happening right now? All that to say is once I made peace with this is our reality right now, this is happening because we can do this, right? There's no mistake here. As overwhelming as this feels, we're going to get through this and it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm putting myself in your shoes, and I think one of the first thoughts would be, oh shit.
I think I said, oh shit, like 50 times.
Yeah. Just to come to terms with, because you understood motherhood of a baby and going into toddlerhood at that time. You knew the reality of it, right? And there's so much beauty in motherhood and so much love and connection and just like euphoric moments. And there's also the moments where you're like, what have I done to myself? I chose this for some reason. So there's this contrast in motherhood, and it's all beautiful. And like you said, there's no mistakes, but also you knew what you were getting into, right? And so I can just put myself in your shoes, the moment of like, wow, and also, okay, all right, we can do this.
There were two big things that came to mind when I found out. Like my two immediate, this is super important to me, and I don't know what this looks like with twins. And that was one, the birth. I was so clear that I wanted to have as natural of a birth as possible, minimal interventions. And two, breastfeeding. So those two things, when I think about my first, came with challenges. Even though it was a great outcome, it certainly was a labor of love. And it really stretched me to be able to do both, to have my birth at a birth center and to nurse my son for like 20 months. It got to a point where physically he didn't fit because twins.
Right.
And what I found to
you
be
were
really
breastfeeding for most of your pregnancy.
for most of my pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Until the very end, because quite literally there was no room.
You're like, okay, we're done.
Yeah. To his chagrin, because once I started nursing the twins, he was like,
yeah,
what's happening here? But what I found to be really surprising is that I found out this news at a birth center, right? I was hoping that I was going to be surrounded by really encouraging voices, this perception that this is going to look a little bit different, but we're going to figure this out and it's going to be okay. The immediate feedback that I got was, this is going to be a hospital birth. More than likely, it's going to be a C-section. And we'll see about breastfeeding, which I thought was so interesting. Like, I didn't expect that in that setting.
How did that feel?
At first, deflating.
Yeah.
In my work, I talk a lot about capacity. Capacity takes on a lot of different forms. It's our time, it's our energy, and it's also our mental bandwidth. And on the heels of taking in such life-changing news, I didn't have a lot of capacity to fight this narrative. I felt like I was already shrinking into survival mode. And then to hear someone so authoritatively tell me this is the only way, it's like I didn't have my full capacity to stand up and advocate for myself.
Yeah, you're in a really vulnerable state.
Yeah. Yeah. And almost like this energy, it's like I went into a mode of conserving my energy as much as I could.
Mm. Hmm.
And
Which makes
I was
sense.
in that mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Biologically, right?
Mhm.
Especially if there's anyone listening that is just finding out that they are pregnant with twins. It is a huge piece of news to process and to digest. And that takes a lot of your capacity. It takes a lot of your energy and a lot of your life force. So it took me about 3 months, about 12 weeks to really process the news, to make peace with it. And when I say make peace with it, not so much the twins themselves, but the birth and other important things like breastfeeding.
Mm-hmm.
Once I processed it, once I allowed myself to really sit with it, feel it all the way through, both the fear, the grief of this is going to look different. That doesn't mean it's bad, but there's definitely a delta here between my expectation and reality. And the anticipation of not having enough support. From the place of being able to process it, from this more rooted, like, okay, I've given my body a chance to tell her full side of the story. Then I was in a better position to go find resources and to go find a better way.
I love that so much. You just felt what was coming up, allowed yourself to experience it, all of it. And once that was felt, it's like your body had completed this cycle. And then from there, you were able to go and resource yourself, which is so beautiful. I want anyone who is listening, you're going to feel scared. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel a lot of undesirable feelings on your journey, and it's okay to feel them. It's truly okay. I think in pregnancy too, we get told the message that like stress is bad for our baby or babies. And we stress out about feeling negative feelings. And I think what really happens is that we are teaching this our fetus or multiple babies inside of us how to navigate emotions. How do we process emotions? And it's okay to feel the grief. It's okay to feel the fear. It's okay to feel the overwhelm. And then you complete the cycle and you're able to move forward. So I just love that you just gave yourself the space to feel what was coming up and then you can move forward. It's not like a sweeping things under the rug kind of strategy. It's like, let's let it all out. Let's clean it up. Let's feel it. Let's see it. And then we can move forward. I love that.
To be honest, in hearing you reflect this back, this is part of my mom's legacy.
Mm.
When she passed, that was the first time in my life that I allowed myself to feel absolutely everything unapologetically.
Mm.
I didn't apologize for the grief. I did not minimize the grief. I dove into every single book I could get my hands on that helped me understand. I questioned the meaning of life. I read a ton of books on near death experiences. I went for it. I did not tiptoe around it. I absolutely walked through the fire, and it was really challenging. I touched a depth of grief that I didn't even know existed, but I healed.
Mm.
And I think that's why today I can talk about my mom. My voice will still quiver, it'll still
Yeah.
bring tears to my eyes. But I know that I'm sharing it from a place of hope and from a place of her love and her legacy continues to live on, even through my kids, because my kids are part of this journey now in healing, being okay with feeling the depth of the human experience, not shying away from it, honoring it. And in doing so, then that makes space for more genuine joy to land because going back to you've given your body the chance to tell her full side of the story. And that's an act of rebellion because how often do we feel the need to maybe not silence our voice, but certainly quiet it down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The way you describe that is so beautiful. And I feel that too, because I've experienced something similar to what you've experienced. And it is such a gift that your mom has passed on to you, that you're passing on to your children. And it reminds me of seeing the image of you, for example, in your mom's womb, and your eggs, which are now your children, also in your mother's womb at the same time. There is this deep connection, even if we've had family members who have crossed over, there is this deep connection, yes, spiritually and energetically, but also physically. The physical DNA, right? The eggs that were actually inside of you, inside of your mother when you were in her womb. There is this physical connection that cannot be broken. And we are shifting things, the way that we move in motherhood, the way that we integrate what has happened and transform it and transmute it. We are shifting the next generation, how they will experience this human condition. And I cannot agree with you more that going into the depths allows you to then experience the like quote unquote positive emotions to a new level. Right. And it kind of reminds me of antidepressants. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But often what happens when I see with patients is that, like, yes, you don't experience the dark emotions all the time, the depression and the anxiety and the doom and gloom. And you also don't experience the joy, the euphoria, the excitement, the motivation, right? And so there is this kind of flatlining that happens. And even without antidepressants, that can happen when we suppress our emotions and suppress our grief and suppress the fear and the angst and all of that. And so, what a lovely gift you're giving to your boys. Sorry, your twins is
Boy or girl, but I do have
a
two
girl
boys.
and a boy. Yes, two boys and a girl. That's right. But what a gift you're offering to your children, like full permission to just feel this reality, that this 3D reality we find ourselves in.
Yes.
Yeah. And I do want to circle back just for a minute before you continue. Just knowing that your younger brothers both had autism. I used to work with children with autism, and I see the load. It's such a heavy load that the parents have to hold. And often there isn't a lot of state funding, or in Canada, a lot of provincial funding, and it can waver, right? And so just being a parent to healthy children is difficult, right? It comes with a lot of challenges. And so I can just imagine you seeing what your parents had to navigate with lots of love, but it comes with so much, right? And I see also the motivation that you have to just, whatever is in your control or whatever factors you're able to play around, whatever levers you're able to pull, you're going to do that because that's something that's within your ability. And there's so much that's out of our control when it comes to parenthood and birth and all of that stuff. So I think I just wanted to say that because I feel the depth and the heaviness that you have been able to transmute into something that is actually empowering, to feel like, you know what, I can actually play with these variables. And so I'm going to do that.
You're touching on something that I am just connecting.
Mm.
Being able to feel the full scope, the full range of my emotions, including shame, including grief, including, wow, this really doesn't seem fair, is the very thing that enabled me to make a decision, an empowered decision around my birth without a sense of shame, without a sense of victim mentality, right? But had I not fully processed how I feel about having two brothers with autism, the full range, right? Because my brothers have taught me an immense amount of empathy. They have such a different way of viewing the world. They truly have been some of my greatest teachers. And they've required an immense amount of patience, an immense amount of love from this really unconditional place because it's some of the reactions, right, are not logical. You don't have the same tools and levers to pull, if you will, when it comes to trying to reason with them. So instead of shying away from this conversation of autism, it allowed me to be able to say, okay, I can both honor the fact that I love my brothers deeply, that this was the design of my human experience, and feel empowered to choose differently going forward.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. It's like you were
So,
training for this
yes,
moment.
100%. And I think that also gave me the courage to see all of the upsides to having a home birth instead of maybe shrinking back into this place of fear. And being in tune with my own emotions too also allowed me to tap in more intuitively as situations arose. I did go through what they call advanced fetal monitoring. I
Mhm.
had a lot of ultrasound appointments, even knowing the risks. I don't know if compromise is the right word, but the midwife that I found, and there's a whole story there, but the midwife that I found after coming to this more healed and calm place of, okay, I'm having twins. I get to have twins and I get to do this my way. What feels good and what feels aligned to me, a home birth.
Mm.
How am I going to find a provider, especially when it's not something that is widely known, right? I live in the state of Florida and there's certain restrictions that have to be accounted for. In following that intuitive ping of there's something here, I know there's going to be a way. I did an incredible amount of, I don't even call it research. It's like pulling on a thread, right? There must be some twin mom that's written a blog. Where could that land? That blog led me to a link to a Facebook group, Birthing Twins Naturally. Great. Let me dig into
Amazing.
here. Search for midwives. No dice. Search for Florida. All of this to say is I found my midwife who had an immense amount of experience, who had delivered more twins than the farm, like Ina Mae Gaskin's
Oh,
farm in
wow.
Tennessee. That was our original plan was we're going to travel up, we'll take an RV, we'll make it up to Tennessee and we'll have the birth in Tennessee until I found Fadwa Halaby from Midwife 360. If you are in South Florida, she is amazing. Just the most sage, wise, yet real, like, she is this perfect blend of having a lot of wisdom and being really honest and transparent on what it takes to prepare for a healthy birth. And once I met her, everything in my body, all of my emotional side came up. Yes, this is
Mm.
a strong yes. This feels very aligned.
Oh my goodness. I want to say two things about that. First is that we had another guest on this podcast who has worked with Fadwa. She had, yes, Fadwa and Barbara Harper. She had a home breech birth.
Mine was too.
Oh, yes. I can't wait to get into this. And the second thing that is coming up for me is just how we have this capacity to pull on that thread, that it's like following the crumbs, right? And we have this capacity to call in the exact support that we need and desire and deserve, that will be even beyond our expectations when we are following those pings, as you call them. You get this ping of, this is what feels right to me, and I'm going to resource myself to be able to create that, to make that a reality. And I also love how you tuned into how your body felt when you met her. Your body was like, yep, let's do this. And that is
Yeah.
so important on this journey. Anyone listening, your body is an ally. That response that you get in your body, whether it's a contraction or a shrinking sensation, like an internal shakiness, or is it this expansive, almost like you're being drawn or magnetized to something, almost like I could equate it to feeling a sense of peace in your body. Listen to that when you're meeting providers, when you're meeting doulas, when your in-laws are suggesting something to you. Listen to these. And like you keep saying on this conversation, which I love, is let your body tell her side of the story. I love
Has so
that.
much to say. And she's ahead of the curve, right? Like
Totally.
sometimes we're catching up to what she already knows. And if there's a difference between my first birth and the twin birth, that was probably the number one differentiator. I was a little bit younger. It wasn't really an age thing, it was more of a lived experience. And the, let's say, maturation that happens when you become a mother, you
Mhm.
have to tap into that intuition to really feel the depth of the experience. And I realized my body birthed this beautiful baby. You become just in awe of what your body can do. My body gave nourishment to this baby. I was able to exclusively breastfeed all three of my kids, despite a lot of unsolicited advice that wasn't going to be the case. And I realized, wow, if I first tune in here, if I first listen to what my body knows, she's going to already clear the path for me. This doesn't have to be an arduous path. It was an unconventional path to get to Fadwa, but it wasn't arduous.
Mm.
And once I found her, I asked her a lot of questions on what is the difference between a twin birth and a twin pregnancy versus a singleton. And I loved her answer. She was actually less about the birth. I mean, the birth was important, but a lot of her focus was a healthy pregnancy starts with a healthy body,
Mm.
regardless of singleton, twin, what types of twins, right? So, similar to the factors with my brothers, what are the factors I can control? What does the data tell us in a human way? For example, having adequate levels of protein has a high correlation to making it to term with twins. And another piece of information that landed well in my body was this makes sense and it feels right. So I very intentionally, very systematically approached what would it look like for me to eat protein that amount. I was eating like 200 grams of protein, 220 maybe.
Oh, oh
It was a lot.
wow.
It was a lot. And you sometimes when you're that pregnant, your stomach just doesn't like eating that much does not feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of allowing that to frustrate me, I thought, what sounds appetizing? How can I do this in a way that feels good to my body and meets this goal? So I had a lot of smoothies, but I would change them up. I'd have them like an apple pie flavor, a Reese's peanut butter flavor. And I was really intentional about what does support feel like in my body. So I went to a chiropractor on a pretty regular basis, making sure that I was aligned. I got a lot of massage. One of the concepts that I teach in my program, which is about how to delegate and how to identify what are the right tasks to delegate, was actually born in this pregnancy. I had a 1 year old son, like you mentioned. I work full time at a large software company, and my husband was traveling a lot. So there was a lot of things to do, a lot of things to get the house ready for two more babies, etc. And there was a point that I was sitting on the couch. I was pretty far along. I was probably like 7 or 8 months. I had an appointment to go to, had work obligations. And in this moment of feeling really overwhelmed, I felt guilt come up. Like, should I really be going to a massage, right? In the middle of all of this going on, that feels like a luxury. And when I started to try to outsource, well, I can ask my mother in law and her husband were visiting, for example. I could ask them for help in maybe organizing the clothes. I can ask my father in law for help with the cribs. As I went through the list, I couldn't outsource that. Both of my pregnancies, I had sciatica pain, which I swear was more intense than the birth. Um, and I realized the only person that can take care of my body and these two babies residing in my body is me.
Mm-hmm.
And how can I feel guilty about it? It shifted my perception of this being something that was associated with guilt. This is strategic. This is leveraged because if I feel good, the babies feel good, And then I'm able to continue to participate in my normal life versus being crippled by sciatica pain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how in our culture, our society, we're made to feel guilty for getting the support that we need and desire, and is actually going to have beneficial ripple effects for our whole family unit and our work as well. You were still working full time. And that's interesting. That's something a lot of moms have to struggle with. But I think once you enter motherhood, you realize that it's not negotiable. It's actually not optional to pull on your support systems, and everyone benefits. The people who are supporting you benefit. They get to be a part of your life and your children's life. You benefit, your children, your marriage. It's a beautiful thing, but we have to almost decondition ourselves from the lone wolf, right? I can do this all on my own. I'm fine. I've got this. It's good. I'm just going to stay up until 3 a.m. doing this last load of laundry. This is not how we're meant to function. We're meant to have this village around us. So taking that radical self-responsibility, as you are describing, that you were like, I'm actually the only one who can advocate for myself and my body, and everyone benefits when I do that. What a beautiful
Absolutely.
thing.
I'm really grateful. And I think in these experiences, these big, stretchy moments of life, when you can, again, tap into what is this telling me? What is this emotion telling me? There is such wisdom there. I really think that they're tailor made for our own growth, for our own evolution in this lifetime. And that was certainly something I had to heal. And especially growing up with two brothers that have autism, I very comfortably fell into the role of it's my job to make everyone's life easier. So if you
Mhm.
ask me what I want to eat, oh no, whatever's good. It was conditioned into me, not purposefully, I don't think, but I went from how my role in this life, in this world, is to make everyone else's life easier to no, I actually think I have a different role here. And I'm still figuring out what that is, but I'm not going to live the full expression of that unless I know how to resource myself first. And that means being one, clear on what I need. And that's what FOD will help me do, right? What goes in, what are the inputs to a healthy pregnancy?
Mhm.
Having your body in alignment, having releasing tension, proper nutrition, those are clear inputs to a healthy pregnancy. So being able to ask for those made a huge difference in me getting to 38 weeks
Yeah. With twins.
with twins. And I feel like that is the perfect segue to the day that they arrived. So different than the first time around. I had a phenomenal doula. Her name is Callie Catton. Well, Callie Smith now, who just had a baby of her own. And she helped me really understand, listen, the contractions, the whole birth experience, it's beautifully designed. It's not something to fear, it's something to embrace. So when I started to feel some pretty intense contractions on August 7th, I relaxed. I realized what they were. I didn't actually think that the birth was going to be that soon, but I realized this is happening. My body's preparing. This is not something to fear. I'm going to be okay. Went about my day as normal, but rested, right? I was more attuned to what are the things that I am meant to do, right? What are my me tasks? My me tasks are taking care of myself in this moment. The next day when I woke up, since I gave my body the space and I honored what's her side of the story, what is she trying to tell me? She's telling me that she needs expansion, she needs rest. When I woke up the next day, my body was ready. I called Callie and I said, hey, I feel like today might be the day. And then on this phone call, I had to put the phone down on the counter because I got super nauseous and started throwing up. And she goes, that's all I need to know. I'll be there in 15 minutes. See you soon. And you know what's wild is I was still not convinced because I was still holding on to the vision of my 26-hour labor. I'm like, we're going to buckle in, get ready. This is going to be a while. I was 5 a.m. Called FODWA. FOD was about an hour away. And she asked, trying to get a sense of how far along I really was. I'm like, no, you've got time to do your morning ritual, get centered. I really wanted everyone in the space around me to be energetically centered, clean, aligned, because I felt the opposite of that the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am thinking I have all the time in the world. And all of a sudden it ramps up. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. I get on a birth ball. Between the birth ball and the birth comb, I did not use a birth comb this first time. Highly recommend it. Made a huge difference.
Yes.
My relationship with the contractions also changed the second time around.
Mm.
The first time, I think I had this perception, this idea that I wanted a pain-free birth. So when I felt contractions, I was kind of upset. I know this sounds a little odd, but I was like, this is not what I expected. Pain-free at all. And I realized there was another book that, I'm so sorry, the name is escaping me, but I'll send it to you in the notes. It's quite old. I think it was written in the 70s and the 60s. And what stood out to me is that they talked less about pain and more about tension. And this is where I felt so validated and having time for my massages and going to the chiropractor. They explained the sensation of pain can really actually come from kind of mismanaged tension. So the more that you could lean into the contraction, the more that contraction arose, you could meet it with almost like honor, right? The first time the contraction would come and I would contract with it, I would kind of push it away. No, not again. This is so intense. The second time, I started to vocalize this contraction. Thank you for this contraction. This contraction is bringing me closer to my baby.
Hey mama, are you ready to transform your birthing experience? We're offering a free guided meditation to help you start rewiring your brain for an empowered birth. Imagine feeling calm and in control, embracing your inner strength, and making your birthing journey smoother and more joyful. Doesn't that sound amazing? It does, right? And it's possible for you. To get started, visit rewireforbirth.com/meditate and grab your free meditation now. Let's make your journey beautiful together.
Yeah.
What a difference to speak a thought like this out loud.
Mm. I'm just getting chills, and I feel that, like, what a different response your body's going to have to this stimulus, where you're vocalizing, you're welcoming it, you're honoring it, you're appreciating it versus pushing it away, tensing up against it, bracing, right? What a difference somatically, physiologically, that your body is able to open and expand versus kind of tense up and contract.
Oh my gosh. This was one of those moments that I think when I watch the highlight reel back of my life, this is going to be one of the most defining moments because it changed my philosophy on life.
Mm.
And to this day, right, as we're filming this, I'm preparing for a major life transition with a lot of moving parts, a lot of contraction. And as it's coming up, instead of pushing it away, which just delays the outcome, right? It just makes the whole process more arduous. I've learned how to lean into some of this discomfort and let the discomfort teach me, let the discomfort soften me, let the discomfort shape me.
Mm.
And my birth lasted 5 hours, mostly because we slowed it down.
Oh my gosh.
It was such a difference. The more that I honored these contractions, I guess really in thinking this out loud, I was talking to my own body. My body was trying to tell her story, which is I need to push this baby down. And I allowed it, right? As this was happening, things were really moving along quite fast. So my doula, Callie, put me in the tub. She goes, we're just going to chill. We're going to give it a second, allow it to arrive. By the time Fadwa arrived, I didn't know this. I was probably ready to push.
Oh my gosh.
It had only been a few hours, but I was also in a trance. I listened to frequency music. I was not in the same room as everyone else. I was almost like floating in labor land. I would come back as they needed to talk to me and then kind of float back up. But that's where my body needed to be. That's where I was able to connect back to, why am I doing this? What's my soul's evolution in this journey? I share that because in that space, all the tension started to dissolve. I
Mm.
was less connected to the tension and more connected with almost my own rebirth. So as Vaude was monitoring everything and I think really just tuning into what my body was also telling her, by the time I started to push, I pushed 3 times with Olivia. I mean, think about that, 6 hours with a singleton. I don't know how many times I pushed. I would pass out in between. Literally, I was so tired.
Wow.
3 solid, gentle, controlled pushes and no tearing at all.
Oh my God. Oh, wow. So,
Olivia came out first. She was the chunkiest twin that I've known. She was 7.5 pounds. So
wow.
squishy. She was bigger than my singleton. And it was such a smooth birth. I was amazed, right? And it was such a moment of redemption for me too, because I realized my intuition was right all along. This is the kind of birth that I was ready for. This was the kind of birth that my body could handle. And I'm so glad I gave it a chance. I'm so
Yeah.
glad I didn't listen to the voices that weren't tuned into my body.
Yeah.
It is very different though to birth a twin because you're not done.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have that experience, but I can just imagine. All right. That's step one.
Yeah. And since there were no interventions, all of the birth hormones, it's quite wild, right? You're euphoric. I don't know if anything in my life will ever top this. And I'm sitting there holding my daughter, and it's my daughter too, right? Like
Yeah.
Olivia, there's a whole nother story on the fact that I thought I was having a daughter first, but we'll save that for next time. So it was this moment of, oh my goodness, you're here. This is the best day of my life. And I learned with my first son had a really short umbilical cord, so short that it snapped, pulled him
Mm.
out of the water too fast. So I was really
Mm.
cautious the second time. And sure enough, super short umbilical cord.
Mm.
So my husband was holding her in the tub as I'm starting to prepare for round 2.
Oh my gosh. Lots of moving
God,
parts to take care of.
lots of moving parts. And they're monitoring all the while to make sure that twin B is safe and doing well. So I'm like, am I supposed to nurse her now? I'm not quite sure. This is such an interesting dance. But it came back to, what does my body need? What is my
Mm.
body telling me? And my body, for the first 10 minutes or so, really wanted to be with Olivia. So I
Mm.
focused all of my energy and attention as much as I could on welcoming in this new baby and holding her and just admiring her. I started to feel contractions again. I started to
Mm.
feel the drop, and I took that as a sign. Okay, I'm going to now transition, hand Olivia over with this very short umbilical cord. And Benji was breech.
Mm.
Fadwa had this portable ultrasound so she could see his position quite clearly.
Mm.
But Fadwa had a ton of experience in delivering breech babies, and she knew exactly what to do. So, different than my first birth, there was no fear. That tension wasn't a present participant in this birth.
Mm.
She guided me. I surrendered to her guidance, to her wisdom, and my body did too. My body was like we were in this dance. And believe it or not, Benji's birth, breech, was the easiest of my 3 births.
How?
He
How?
just like split out. Incredible,
Wow.
right? It
Yeah.
defied all of the misconceptions that I think exist about birth.
Oh my gosh. When you're telling your story, multiple rounds of chills and goosebumps going through my body. And I can just feel the profundity of what you're describing. You're really drawing me into the environment that you were in. And I want to just clarify a few things for the listeners. You mentioned the birth comb, like the wave comb that you
Yes.
used. So anyone listening who is not sure what that is, it's basically just a comb. There's a branded one called the wave comb, but you can just use any comb and you hold it in your hand and it stimulates an acupuncture point that helps with coping with the intensity of the birth experience and the surges and the waves and the contractions. And there was something else that you mentioned that I wanted to touch upon. The having people in your space when you're in labor, the energy of the people present in your space when you are in labor is a factor that you need to consider. I think we don't even think of it as something that can impact us when it actually can have big impacts on how we are experiencing our birth, how deeply we're able to connect and tune into our bodies and the process that's unfolding into our babies. And Fadwa sounds like a literal angel who was in your space. And if you can briefly touch upon what the differences were in how she came into your space, how your doula came into your space, how they were behaving. I know you were kind of in labor land, but if you can touch upon some of the qualities of their behavior and their movements in the space, I think that'd be valuable for people to hear.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad you asked this because I did not know this the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So Fadwa and Callie, and there was actually 3 midwives present and the doula. They all were quite calm. They had a lot of confidence in their own abilities, but in a very grounded way. I would say, first and foremost, they respected birth.
Mm.
They understood the physiological process that a body goes through. They didn't rush it. They observed. They didn't go in with a preconceived notion. They first familiarized themselves with the space, with me, with what was happening, meeting me and the birth where it was at.
Mm.
Whereas in contrast, the first time around, there was almost a preset set of events that needed to happen by a certain time. They had me like running laps in Florida heat at, like, on August. Insane, right? Because there was this idea that my body wasn't speeding up as fast as it should. Whereas Fadwa and Callie, they first listened. What's the body telling us? How is she looking? How is she feeling? So that was what really set the energetic tone. And then Callie shared this with me later. When I was thanking them, I was so just like amazed. This is the best day of my life. And from this place of immense gratitude, thank you for helping me do this. Callie said, it was really you. You knew what you needed. You expressed it clearly, respectfully, but clearly. You weren't wishy washy, right? It was when I needed counter pressure, I was really clear. And I really emphasize this because this is not my natural personality. This is something I've had to evolve into. But instead of having this apologetic approach of maybe I need counter pressure in
Now.
this place now, but it made it really easy for everyone to give me the support and the help I needed. I guess now in hindsight, like kind of the training ground for the work I do is how do you lovingly provide clarity so that you can receive support, help that actually feels helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So each step
Absolutely.
of the way, I was so clear. I would like some clary sage. I would like some water. I would come down from labor land, get what I needed, and then transcend again. So one is the person respecting the space. Do they respect birth as its own divine, just incredible event that has its own wisdom? And can they be a participant in it instead of dominating it?
Mm.
And two, can you allow yourself to step into that identity of this is my birth, this is my body. I am in tune with what I want, and I can ask for things from a place of love and dignity. I'm
Mm-hmm.
unapologetically giving my body what she needs.
Yes. What's coming up for me as you're saying this podcast used to be called The Birth CEO. And
Oh,
me and you from the retreat that we attended at the beginning of October understand that word differently. We understand it as the chief energetic officer of yourself, of your body, of your birth experience, of your space that you're creating. And I love that you tapped into that identity and really took that on, because you're right. It does make it easier for yourself to give yourself permission to just ask for what you need when you need it, with love and respect, but also unapologetically, and to recruit and call in the people who are going to be able to support you in that experience. So, girl, you stepped into your birth CEO.
right.
I love hearing it.
I stayed there.
Mm,
I stayed in that identity after they were born.
yeah.
The first time around, I was not quite sure. It was my first postpartum, and I wasn't exactly even sure what. I think actually I didn't know how to listen to my body. So my
Mm,
body wanted to be with my baby. I wanted to nurse. I was recovering from a lot of pain from everything that I went through after the birth. And there were moments that I didn't know how to advocate for that. I didn't know how to listen to that without feeling like I couldn't. I was really concerned about hurting other people's feelings.
mm,
The second time, I learned okay, that same energy that allowed me to have this incredible birth, this safe birth, is what's also going to shape this second postpartum period. And it's really carried me through even now. My twins are 2.5. But when you have twins, you run out of margin. What I mean by margin is you are completely consumed. When you're tandem nursing, that's it. There, you
mm-hmm,
could listen to a podcast like this one, but there's not much else you can do because even both of your hands are tied.
mm,
If you can embrace that for what it is, though, you also realize, okay, this is a chance for me to energetically define what it looks like to be consumed, but also supported. So I was able to more clearly ask for the types of food that I needed in postpartum support. If someone was coming in to help, it wasn't so much the baby that I needed help with. I needed help with like the food and the laundry and all of the household items.
mm-hmm.
So being able to first like define how do I want this to feel? If there's a takeaway, I think, from this whole conversation, your feelings and how you want something to feel is really, there's no substitute for that being a compass in your birth journey.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And I love going back to after Olivia came out, I love that you tapped into what your body was asking or telling you in that moment. And it was like, just take it in. Your baby girl just arrived. And you had this moment of like honoring her birth, which I assume in a lot of twin births, it's like, all right, baby A is out. Let's focus on getting baby B out. And there's no reverence for the fact that a new life just arrived. And so I love that you were able to give yourself and give your baby girl that moment of just like awe and wonder. And oh my goodness, she's arrived. How beautiful.
It really was. This is, I think, a huge testament to Fadwa and her foresight in having two other midwives accompany her because she could focus on Olivia, I could focus on Olivia, and then the other two could monitor what was happening inside.
Mm. And I want to hear how baby B.
Came into this world. Oh, my Benji. Huge impact to not fear it, right? And a lot of that was Fadwa also setting the tone. I know what I'm doing. I have delivered thousands, maybe not thousands. I think she had delivered 2,200 babies, but certainly hundreds. She also took command in that moment. And when I say command, honoring the birth process, but also being able to guide the other midwives around her as to what she needed to be able to deliver him safely. She
Mm,
had me position my legs in a certain way. In her trusting her own wisdom, that really cleared the path for all of us to work in a team. And
mm,
same thing, Benji was 3 pushes because it was kind of this phased approach where I had to push just a little. She tucked his chin. It was a very controlled dance in getting him out, but it was truly as wild as it sounds, my most painless birth. He
Wow.
just about slid out.
Did he come out feet first or bum?
Feet first.
Oh,
Feet
cute.
first. There's an incredible photo, and he's still almost like in call, but I think his foot broke the sack. Once he came out, he was a bit smaller than Olivia. He was 5.5 pounds.
Mm.
So they put a little bit more attention on making sure he was great. Olivia was like a 10 APCAR, and I think he was a 9, but he was great. And in hindsight, that was also a moment where I realized there's certainly a moment for life-saving interventions.
Mhm.
Benji surely would have been a C-section in a hospital here in South Florida.
Mhm.
And something that Fatima explained that I thought was so wise is, and with good reason, because if someone delivering this baby doesn't have the skill set of delivering a breech baby, they shouldn't do so.
Yeah.
And that I think is a huge thing to be aware of, is really what's the skill set of this midwife? How have they been trained? Just a few days after this birth, Fadwa went to attend a seminar that was about breech birth in twin births. And it was perfect. It could
Oh,
not have
wow.
been more aligned.
Yeah.
But for me,
Yeah.
that was such a sign of who is this? What's their approach? What's their philosophy? How do they prepare themselves?
Mm.
So that gave me a lot of confidence. And she really, in that moment, she completely stepped up and brought him in safely. And the rest of the morning was just bliss. I recovered
Wow.
so well. They were really proactive in measuring blood loss, making sure that my levels were okay. And we just kind of melted into this cocoon of, wow, we just brought 2 new lives. We went from being a family of 3 to a family of 5. Augie went to school that day and came back, and insta family. And
Wow.
yeah, it was such a calm, grounded experience. And I really hope that it serves as an example of what this can look like.
Yes. Yeah. That's a part of rewiring ourselves for the birth experience, is just hearing other stories of what's possible. Because if we don't know, then we just don't know, right? And we just will listen to our healthcare providers who say that this is going to be a C-section as soon as you find out that you're pregnant. And that can be the path that is right for some people. But if your internal compass is guiding you in another way, then there's also another way that's possible for you. I am curious about the placentas.
Yeah.
If you can tell us how that was managed, or not managed, but how they were born.
Oh my gosh, you were so right. Things that you kind of forget, because once Benji was born, it's like, all right, here we are. So similar, I was going to say constraint, but that's a little bit more negative. Similar factor in that Benji's umbilical cord was also short.
Mm.
So there was a lot of teamwork in keeping them above the water, but still connected to the placenta.
Mm.
The placenta came out probably about 10 minutes after Benji was born. I had Di twins, so they each had their own placenta and their own sac. But with that space, the placenta kind of fuses together. So once I birthed up the placenta, they put it in this bowl that essentially floats in the water, and we hung out there for a while. Once we were getting ready to cut the cord, it was really kind of fascinating. We put the placenta in a bag, put that bag in this like tote bag that Sergio put on his shoulder. So he was carrying the placenta over his, just bless him. This was a really beautiful moment because by that point, the cords were pretty much white. And my mother in law was there. My mother in law had 2 C-sections. So she hadn't experienced any of this.
Wow.
Her births were so different. And there was a moment that she thanked me for allowing her to witness this and kind of reconnect to what birth really is. And she expressed, like, wow, this is just fascinating. This is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And
Mm.
it was almost like this redemptive moment of her reconnecting with that birthright that we have to feel our births. So she cut Olivia's umbilical cord. And it was just such a moment. She was like, wow, this is incredible. She didn't get to witness any of that.
Yeah. Wow. So beautiful. So both of the cords were attached to this fused placenta that came out after both of the babies were born. And then you kind of like put it in a sack, a little tote bag that went around your
Tote bag.
shoulder, your partner's shoulder for a little bit. And just to explain a little bit further for the listeners, that's considered a lotus birth, right? So when babies come out and the placenta comes out and all still attached, and to go further from that, some lotus births, they can even dry out the placenta in that tote bag until the umbilical cords come off on their own. And that gets more into a little bit of the spiritual connection with the placenta, which is technically the twin of your baby from a DNA perspective. But so beautiful to be able to offer your babies all of their blood that was in the placenta. You waited until the cords were white before cutting them, and you were able to offer this gift to your mother-in-law to see the physiologic birth experience of twins. Her mind must have been blown as my mind is blown listening to this. And yeah, what a difference of what you were being guided to initially when you found out you had twins to what you experienced in reality. And so I just want to really celebrate you for listening to that internal authority, tapping into that, and just pulling on that thread and letting it lead you wherever it was meant to lead you. My jaw has been on the floor for a lot of this conversation. It's really inspiring. I think it just really portrays what's possible when we get the right support. And I also wanted to mention, I love that you brought up the skill set of your practitioner, because a lot of practitioners, unfortunately, aren't taught how to deliver a breech baby, and therefore their confidence and their skill set in it is lacking. And if the listeners want to go back to the episode I recorded with Dr. Stu Fishbein, he's actually going around teaching practitioners how to deliver breech and twin births at home or in a birthing center, and of course transferring to the hospital when necessary. But he's an obstetrician who worked in the hospital for decades. And this is unfortunately a skill that's being atrophied. So thank you for bringing that very important aspect of it to light. And Katrina, what has happened? What has unfolded since you've had these transformative, life-altering experiences? How has it altered your motherhood journey? How has it altered your career choices? Let us know what has happened after you also had your mind blown by yourself and your body.
It was, by all accounts, a rebirth. I entered that pregnancy as one person and came out a totally different one. I was more in tune to, okay, I have an immense amount of power here. Like I have an immense amount of wisdom that I'm going to start to listen to. And at the same time, the fear that I felt when I first found out I was having twins was actually founded. It's intense to go from 0 to 1 and 1 to 3 for sure. But it really birthed this new area of work for me. I started to realize probably right away, to be honest, that this is a totally different load than what we were ready for. Something that I became really conscious of is capacity. Like we talked about earlier, it can be time capacity, energy, mind, mental bandwidth. And as I became more aware of this, I realized this isn't going to get better. If my capacity fits like 2x2, right? But the total demand is a 4x4 space, this isn't going to add up. The only way I can make it through this phase, and not just make it through, but actually enjoy it, is to find a way to expand my capacity because the demands aren't going to diminish. I have 3 babies now. Like this is my new baseline. And there was one moment when the twins were about 6 months old. They were at this point eating solids. So lunchtime was looking a lot different for us. My husband and I got home from an afternoon at the gym with all 3 kids. And we were about to walk into a very long afternoon because it was lunchtime, but we didn't have anything prepped. We were living in survival mode. And living in survival mode looks like planning and executing at the same time. And that never goes well. And I realized there's a different way. And could I lean on the parts of myself that maybe went offline a little bit? My professional background is internal corporate consulting. And still in this world today, that would go in, help teams do more with less. How do we scale programs? What's a more systematic approach to doing business? I realized there's a lot of freedom when it comes to structure. And that sounds so counterintuitive. But all that structure is, all that systems are a consistent answer to a frequently faced scenario. This started partially in the birth, right? I am prone to getting sciatica, or I have to get a lot of protein in my body. What's a consistent way I can do that so that I can essentially let that part of my life run on autopilot so I have more capacity to be more expressive in other areas of my life, more presence with my kids, more ideas for my business. And in that afternoon, I realized, okay, there's a lot that I could automate here when it comes to lunch. So I started to ask the question, what would it look like to get meals on the table in 10 minutes or less? Minimal cleanup. Being able to ask the question is so important, right? Going back to birth, how do I want to feel? What would it look like to have a birth that feels supported and safe?
Mm.
So from that, with that frame, I realized I would have absolute clarity on what they were going to eat. What does that look like? Not just having leftovers in the fridge, but having containers that are for like, this is Saturday's lunch for the twins and Saturday's lunch for Augie. Lunch on the weekends went from being this odyssey where all of this prep, and it's wild how quickly a kitchen can just kind of explode.
Oh, yes.
Oh my gosh. To nutritious, nutrient dense meals, no microwave. We didn't sacrifice any of our values when it comes to food, but we had dinner or we had lunch on the table in literally 10 minutes. Cleanup was a breeze. And I realized, wait a second, there's something here. Moms, more than anything, need structure and something to lean on, something tangible to lean on in this phase of life. And that is what I call my fourth baby, Moms Who Leverage, was born out of answering this question on what does more sustainable support look like? And it's a collection of systems for laundry so it doesn't become overwhelming, for meals, for getting out the door. Every part of the day that we tend to feel friction, I have a supported mom playbook that has a plug and play system for each of those parts of the day.
This is so brilliant. And I'm just picturing the applause of all parents around the world with young kids or even older kids, because these seemingly mundane tasks that we have that are just a part of our daily life can create so much friction, so much overwhelm, so much chaos and confusion and tension between the family dynamic as well. Tell us more, give us more examples, because I think every mom's ears, especially who understands the postpartum period, is just perking up right now.
Oh, thank you. I mean, this is one of those moments where I looked back and I could just see with immense gratitude, wow, thank you. This is where it was all going. I saw a lot of the dysfunction growing up in the sense of huge demands, right? Two kids with autism, without the clarity of how do we tackle this in a way that is leveraged? When I think of the word leverage, the lever is key, right? How do I get maximum lift? How do I get the outcome that I need with a smaller amount of input? Especially once you have more than one kid, I think it's so important to honor your capacity and how you want to live. If you're having to reinvent the wheel every single day, you have less capacity for presence, less capacity to sit with yourself, to sit in silence and meditate and refill your own cup. All of these things that we treat as luxuries, but they're really the foundation for how we show up in the world. So that's an example, right? Every morning, I take a moment for myself because if I am feeling 10 out of 10, everything I touch in my life, my kids, my relationships, my career, they get the 10 out of 10 version of me.
Mhm.
If I am depleted and if I'm operating at a 5 out of 10, even with the best intentions, it's a math equation. I only have a 5 out of 10 version of myself to give. So these systems, they're for every area of my life. So what does it look like for me to have that time in the morning? That means breakfast is accounted for. That means my process for getting their lunches heated and served is also accounted for. A lot of this comes down to visibility. We as moms tend to carry so much of the mental load because it's like when you go to a hair salon and you ask for a haircut, you usually have to show them a picture. Otherwise, you will have vastly different ideas of what you mean. That's what a good system does. A good system paints a picture in the other person's mind so they can step in and carry a lot of that load alongside you. So if my husband gets up before I do, which is when he's home, that's the case. He's taking on that system, that playbook in the morning. So by the time I go downstairs, I'm taking on the playbook of getting them dressed and out the door. Getting them dressed and out the door, for example, we're often scrambling because we're trying to like pull the mental file from the cabinet of what is it that they need? What's the day to day? What are they doing after school? Whereas the system can really carry the load for you. So we have a basket that we keep at the entrance, and there's a playbook or a checklist of the things that they need on a weekday basis and then on a weekend basis. So I'm not sitting in the car going, oh my gosh, I forgot the water bottle or I forgot the permission slip. I have that system to lean on. That's my second brain. So as I'm going through the morning, it's guiding me. I'm not spending all of my life force trying to remember this mental list.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the thousands of decisions that we are asked to make, like before breakfast, right? As moms, as parents, and how much this can give you back that mental bandwidth and that capacity, that life force that you're talking about. I think there are so many factors in what invigorates us and what gives us that energy to move through our day from a place of almost enthusiasm versus what is depleting that life force from the moment we wake up to how scattered you feel, how confused you might be, all the decisions, the minutia, the getting things. You said it so right. It's survival mode. It is deciding what you need to do and executing it simultaneously. I totally feel that. Totally understand when I'm in survival mode versus the mornings that go smoothly because I've done some forethought and prepared some things ahead of time. It's really helpful. So I think my question is, before we begin to wrap up, is do you take time like one day a week to put everything in place so that the rest of the week moves smoothly? How does it work from just a practical standpoint?
Yeah, great question. So, another concept I teach is that we live in a collection of systems. Everything that we do, from getting your clothes on in the morning, from doing your makeup, from how you drive, it's a system. I think sometimes we misinterpret systems and think of them as very technical, very heavy, very clunky. If you go back to the concept that it's just a consistent answer to a frequently faced scenario, you start to look at it a little bit differently. I say this because I am consistently living and executing my systems. So, meal prep is an example. Full transparency, I have someone that helps me with meal prep, and I'm able to do so and to afford it because I have clarity as to what I need them to do in those few hours. But they're overlapping systems that help me get there. I have a system for ordering food, so I have clarity on what to order and I'm not ordering too much so that it's going bad. I have a system for the prep so that the prep is setting me up so I can have a fresh meal, but cook time is minimal and cleanup time is minimal. I have that prep take place, for example, on Fridays and on Mondays. Mondays cover my week, Fridays cover my weekends. So these things are on a continual rhythm. When it comes to my self-care, I have a rotating block, for example, on Fridays, and I rotate appointments in that same hour. So it's consistent. My body knows kind of to expect it, and I'm rotating what I need in throughout there. Once a week, I do a thorough planning session. It's not super time consuming. It takes about 30 minutes. But what I'm really doing in those planning sessions is I'm defining what playbook do I need to lean on here. So, for example, it's Thanksgiving. How do I prepare for Thanksgiving? I have a holiday playbook so that I can define what our plans are, what prep is needed. If you think about sports, right, and running a play, which is why I use the word playbook, what I do in these planning sessions is I see what's coming, I identify what's next, and then since I've already built the system, that mental legwork of what needs to happen, the planning part, it's already taken care of. I'm just executing on that. So, a long
Mhm.
way of answering. It's really a lifestyle shift, more so than just a surface level one day a week. I've shifted my way of thinking of building playbooks, which is the name leverage, right? That's where the moms who leverage the name leverage came from, this idea of how do I solve for something once? How do I solve for something in a way that I am solving today's problem and tomorrow's? And the answer to that is this collection of playbooks.
I love that so much. I don't have twins, but I'm a single mom, and so I need to leverage wherever I can to make the day feel smoother and less chaotic. And so I'm going to be tapping into your resource. I went to your website and I downloaded this free resource that you were offering, and so I'm going to be able to tap into that. Where can listeners just explore what you're offering, learn more
Yeah.
about what you're offering? Because even in the pregnancy phase, especially when our energy is a little bit lower, even before we have kids running around. I think this approach can just make things so much smoother for, yes, the mother, but also the marriage, right? The partnership, rather, of these two people who are going to be raising a new human and don't really know a lot about what to expect. So, this is such a valuable resource. Where can people learn more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. This is giving you the clarity on what it takes to come together as a team and actually enjoy this phase of life. So I'm so honored. You can find me at momswholeverage.com, and there you'll find links to the supported mom playbook, resources on how to delegate. I would say if you're in a state where you're feeling a little overwhelmed and like, I don't even know where to start, join.momswholeverage.com/reset is a great place to start. It's my reset guide that helps you identify and plug your energy leaks.
Mm.
This will give you the capacity so you can feel like, okay, I can see where I'm at. I can see what's draining my energy. Now I know what playbooks to lean into to start to get some relief.
Yeah. And what a lovely way to make that implicit mental and energy load a little bit more explicit so the people in your life are also on the same page. This is so valuable. So we'll put that in the show notes for everyone so that they can have easy access to it. And I'll also put your Instagram handle. And as we wrap up, as my last question, I always preface it with saying when a new life is entering this reality, and you've experienced this times three, Corina, there is a profound imprint that takes place. And that imprint is multifactorial. It is the imprint of the energy of the people in the room, the state that the mother is in, all of the hormones that are active and being orchestrated in this moment. And this imprint can be one of love and safety and trust, this big welcome party for this new life coming into this reality. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes it's an imprint of mistrust, of survival mode, of fear for whatever reason. And I think when enough mothers, when enough families are supported the way that we are meant to be supported in this rite of passage, the way that we desire to be supported, the way that we deserve to be supported, we are going to be looking at such a different world because the next generation will be a generation moving through the world from a place of love and safety and trust instead of from fear and survival mode and mistrust. So, this is big work that we're doing, big work that you're doing. And I would love to know what you would like to imprint onto the ears of the listeners. It's a lot of new moms, like I mentioned, moms who are preparing, families who are preparing for the birth of a baby, and also women who want to birth something beautiful into the world. They want to use that womb space, creative life force energy to birth a business, to birth a creative endeavor. What would you like to imprint onto their ears?
This is such a beautiful question. Thank you. And thank you for holding the space, because when you are new to this phase of motherhood, if you're pregnant for the first time, I think the overwhelming sentiment can be unknown. This is my first time doing this. It's almost like I don't want to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What I would imprint into anyone who's listening is, first and foremost, to trust the built in guidance you already have. Your body was already wise enough to know exactly how to build a baby, how to give it nutrients. There's so much guidance when we know how to tap into it. And that means listening through a different way. There's certainly an importance and time and a place to listening to the advice and the guidance from those who have gone before you. But your birth is yours. If I would have listened to all of the twin birth stories around me, my outcome would have been very different. My path statistically is very different than most people who have twins. And it was such a beautiful, healthy outcome because I listened first with my body. Mm. And as I connected and decided to trust into other angels, really like Fadwa, their guidance was able to land for me because I first checked in. How does this feel? How do I feel in the presence of this person? And if it's a go, yes, I can soften and let it in, but always with this filter of, does my body feel expansive here, or is it trying to push something away? Once you're in that zone of safety where your body and you are on the same page, you're in a conversation, your body then is going to be in a place of more ease, so that when you do face contractions, whether they be contractions in birth, contractions postpartum, as you're expanding your capacity and stepping into this new reality, your body can really trust, okay, she's got me. She's listening to my side of the story. I'm being heard here, and it's safe to release. It's safe to receive.
Oh my gosh, such wise words. And in my body, I feel at ease just listening to you say that and reminding us of the deep wisdom within our bodies. Thank you so much, Corina, for taking the time to do this. I know you are preparing for a massive move to a different country, and yet you made the time to share your birth stories. And I feel so blessed because you are really just showing people what's possible. So thank you for your work.
Oh, Cindy, thank you. Honestly, thank you for the time, for the opportunity to share this story. And I truly hope it meets whoever needs it at the right moment and place, as this is my gratitude and my give back. Thank you to others who shared their story. When I was pregnant, I found my path.
Absolutely. This is how we rewire ourselves for birth.
That's right.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Rewire for Birth. We hope you found our discussion inspiring and empowering. If you enjoyed the episode, we would greatly appreciate it if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews help us reach more listeners and spread the message of holistic, empowered birth experiences. Feel free to mention what you loved about today's episode and how it helped you feel more prepared and confident about your birthing journey. Your feedback not only encourages us, but it helps other moms-to-be find our podcast and join this incredible community. Together, we can make a positive change in the world of birth. Until next time, stay empowered and keep rewiring for birth.